All right, so we're going to be talking about chapter 8, making things happen, for the Making of a Manager book club. It's November 23rd of 2021. And Austin, you have the first item there.
Yeah. So what I picked up on in like the first couple sections, welcome Gosha, glad to have you.
Hi.
Is it was like kind of laying out how organizations can help create like a game plan for their team members, their contributors, their managers. I feel like the way that I'm seeing this manifest in GitLab is like the way it's like percolating down to specific divisions and responsibilities is through our quarterly like OKR efforts. Product, engineering, design, or UX rather, all as examples have like these quarterly efforts, but they are like agreed upon at I think our like VP level, or maybe even up to our C-suite, which I feel like helps create some sort of like vision for where we're going each quarter. But at the same time, I also kind of feel like it's a hodgepodge of things that we just try and like blend together. But what are y'all feeling in that way?
I've always felt like certainly that's part of the intent with the OKRs. I do think over my time at GitLab, at least, I've had mixed exposure to them. Like there are times when I know like, oh, this is my team's OKRs for the quarter, or this is my department's OKRs for the quarter. But then there's another quarter where I never even hear about it necessarily. And I'm not sure if there's any reason behind that. I'd be kind of curious if other people have similar experiences, or if they are more aware of them consistently.
I get exposed to them more now than I was before. Unfortunately, sometimes. Yeah, but definitely, I believe that they tend to get like diluted going down. So they are like, people are focusing them on a higher level, but till it comes to like ICs, it's like, yeah, it's not that like understandable. But sometimes it just, sometimes it's, we are not exposed as much because we don't see them as OKRs, like we as NICs, but we see them as issues. Like for example, you know how I think the OKR was about infra-dev issues that we are like focusing on, and it was like between our AMs and PMs to schedule them. So we were just like, we may not even be aware that it was like a part of like OKR, just because it was just work we were doing.
I feel like one thing that's interesting to note in terms of like trying to rally teams around objectives and making them like, I think the way that she phrased it was, how she titled this section, like creating a vision, a believable game plan, focusing on like team strength. When I think GitLab is still small enough that you can connect the dots all the way from the top to the bottom, and show how you're like contributing to like the bigger vision. So when we talk about GitLab's mission of like everyone can contribute, it's still easy for me to like draw a line from like how my contributions impact that. But when you work for like a really, really big organization, like several 100,000 employees or millions of employees, and your company is splintered across like numerous products and offerings, that can be like really challenging because like, say for example, your company does, I don't know, they're most well known for their supply chain and logistics, but you work in the smart device area that has nothing really to do with the shipping and logistics portion. It's hard to really know, like, am I impacting that area of the business? Because like that's not my team's focus. And then you really have to help hone in where your teams are making an impact. But right now, I think GitLab is still small enough that you can see it all the way up and down.
It's a very good generic example.
Yeah, I mean, I guess a personal example is I used to work for Boeing, and that's fine. Just mentioned because it's in my LinkedIn profile. But one thing that was hard for me as like an individual contributor was like we always talked about like increasing the throughput of like airplanes was like a metric the company was always looking at, and like I didn't work anything related to airplanes at times. And so it was hard to know like, oh great, I hear the CEO talking about how great we're doing with our aircraft. Cool. I'm just trying to help developers be like more effective in collaborating, which is just, it's very disconnected from that like ultimate vision.
Yeah, the
So
same like for example for like for you and for me, it's like in managed team, it's sometimes we're talking about this like big CI/CD cycle and there's managed, so like people need to log in or something. So it's like sometimes it's so very hard to like see yourself in the big picture. So yeah, I totally get it.
Cool. Steve, I'll let you bump over to your next point then.
So this was just a quote that I pulled out that I thought was kind of interesting. So she said, just as your management style reflects who you are and what you're good at, so too should your plans take into account your team's unique capabilities. And I just really liked this idea that, like, you don't just necessarily make plans, and if you do a good job planning, then you did a good job. It's more, you need to be mindful of like, do these plans fit what my team can do, and is it going to work with the different skills that these people have? So just having a good plan doesn't necessarily mean that the plan is good. I thought that was kind of an interesting point.
There's like so much stuff that you need to like the manager needs to take into consideration during planning. So yeah, there's what actually people are capable of and what they can actually where they can actually do a good job. But also there's like business impact and so on. So I would say it's like a tricky balance to get.
Probably where I felt this like most painfully is like working in a bigger organization where they're obsessed with project management. It drove me nuts to like have project managers trying to find like, okay, you get 1 month to work on this section of the app, and we need to know before you've even looked at the code base how long it's going to take to do feature X. And their sole job is to just create a roadmap of these nice looking epics that are going to show directors of when all their features are going to ship. And it's like, just because we came up with this like plan of when we're going to ship features, you can pretty much assume it's not going to work because it was made with zero awareness. But you had to have the plan. So we spent 1 week just hammering out a plan that will inevitably change and be completely useless in a week. But good, you got a plan for out the door to make a director happy and then sad shortly thereafter. I don't know if there's really a good way to like discourage that behavior, but I don't know. Have y'all ever had that pain point where you're forced to like plan something when you know like there's no point in trying to plan this thing? It's too squishy.
Yeah. I just want to say like yes, and then like sticking to the original dates, even though it requires like a crazy amount of hours and it's like not realistic because of some roadblocks. That's why I'm here.
I've been fortunate enough to work in a Kanban style most of my career. So yeah, from the beginning we well decided like, yeah, it's been a lot of time actually. And it sort of continues in GitLab. GitLab is a weird mixture, I feel like. We don't, at least in plan, we don't exactly plan like you do these plan meetings where you debate and put stuff on the board and say we will deliver this stuff, but at the same time you kind of need to give some sort of a heads up to the customers what's coming, right? And sometimes there are some things that you need to commit to in a way. And that's difficult to balance, that's difficult to manage, I guess. But like before, when I worked at the previous company, the whole strategy and idea was let's prioritize what's the most important thing. And then we pick that from the top of the board, work on that and move on with the rest of the, because it is not going to take less if we plan it. And it's just like kind of wasting time to analyze, plan, come back, replan, and then that's just like frustration and time waste. So yeah, sometimes though, like some things may slip through the cracks, but I don't think that's different if you plan, basically. As long as you have it prioritized and people know what the priorities are, I think that's better than spending time planning. I mean, it makes sense to have this higher end vision and know what you strive for. Basically, what's the goal, what's the direction. But doing this hardcore planning and breaking down issues or things to very small details, it doesn't always work out that way because you always uncover things, right?
Yeah, definitely. I think one thing I picked up from being at GitLab is because we work primarily in GitLab and everything is documented more or less between an issue or merge request. There is a lot less reporting of status that needs to occur because it can be pulled at pretty much any time. So yes, like obviously our sales team would probably love to know exactly when a feature is going to ship, but they can generally pick up a pattern. Like there's an issue, we're at the end of a milestone, there's no merge request in yet, it's likely probably going to slip. In previous teams, there just was never like a really great asynchronous working environment. So merge requests would come in super late, even though the code was 99% done. It was just hadn't pushed it back up to the main branch. And, you know, just a lack of good virtual collaboration really created a problem for project managers that were like, when is this feature going to be done? It's like, oh, actually, it's pretty much done. I just haven't pushed up the code yet, which, you know, I think transparency really helps in that regard. We're pretty upfront, and then I also just like that it's not a huge deal when something slips. Like, okay, and what's the next milestone? That life moves on. We'll focus on it. It'll be a priority. The next milestone.
Yeah, it's probably a bigger thing. The planning and kind of making the plan public is a bigger thing in a closed code base, in a like closed company, I would say, because then there is really no visibility into, well, what are you going to work next? What are your priorities? Will I get the features that I'm expecting? And if not, when will I get them? And in a kind of open environment, right, where you have everything there, it's kind of easier to understand that this is not a priority, so you'll probably not get these, but these are the other things that are being worked on or something along those lines.
Cool. Anything else, Steve, on that point? Cool. I'll move to the next one. So the next thing I had said was, I kind of feel like this chapter is one big ad for our handbook. In some ways, when it talks about breaking things into small chunks and processes are ever evolving, I just feel like that's exactly what our handbook tries to encourage our whole company to do. is try and break things down to the most minimal viable change. Keep trying to send in merge requests. Like, we really try and embrace that as a company as a whole. So I think what's been good for me, at least, is to see how that happens. So like, we might have a broad vision in the product for a feature we want to do, and then being able to see historically, like, how do we actually reach that vision across, you know, several hundred merge requests, let's say. It really does paint a picture of how GitLab evolved over time, and kind of like sets a good precedent for how we do it in the future. Like keeping merge requests small. Seems so simple, but it's very hard.
It is really hard. Anyone who needed to split their merge request into smaller ones after finishing it needs, like, knows how hard it is.
Yeah, also like delivering small features, sometimes it just feels unnatural, to say the least, right? That's yeah, I don't even know how to express it. Like sometimes it just doesn't feel okay. It somewhat feels unbaked, like unfinished. So like you don't really want to deliver something that and I know, like we say that something that is being delivered, it should be functional, should not have bugs, and should not have like security issues and all that stuff. But still, sometimes it feels like I would rather wait more to deliver kind of a full user flow, like user journey, before I can deliver something, and that's not always the right path, the right way to go. So yeah, like you can skip deletion of an item to the next release, and just do the create and view or something like that, right? And then do the delete the next month or 2 or 3, so let them clean it up. But like it doesn't always feel as easy.
I agree. I mean, I was reviewing a change today, and it wasn't even a full experience. It's just the page was written in Haml, and it's not using view components, and it wasn't reasonable to say in that MR, oh, let's update this entire section, or this, even just that one input would require its own milestone of effort to convert it to a new component. So it felt like a suboptimal user experience, but really it's just there are parts of GitLab that are old. Like I think the thing I was looking at was like the last change to this flash alert was 7 years ago, and I'm like, great, time to update the 7-year-old thing. But I'm not going to make this happen in a merge request where it's just using what was already there, although it needs to be addressed at some point. I agree. It feels unnatural. Like I'm like, oh, I don't really want that to go in the wild, but it kind of has to, and we'll just have to come back to it.
Iteration value can be like so much more than like just creating small MRs. Iteration value can be like iterating on the process, iterating on like how we like even approach certain problems. For example, like, oh, we had bad experience doing that. We have similar problem. Let's do it another way because the last way like took us just too much time. So iteration value, like I try to fight this like this idea that iteration value is just small MRs. Like not like iteration value can be so much more, and if we embrace it more, it will be even better. So
I agree. That ties into the directly into that next point that I have about execution versus strategy. There's a section in the chapter about kind of looking at like, what does it mean to have like a good strategy versus like are you executing well? And there was a specific section where I think they say we can either spend the next few weeks debating about which ideas are best, or we can try to learn as quickly as possible by doing. And I was just like, that's pretty much the iteration value in a nutshell. Is, you know, don't spend a lot of time up front learning something that you might not even have right once you start doing it. It's beyond the small MRs, which is what I think a lot of ICs initially kind of go to.
Yeah. Like debating idea, I don't think is useful, but validating ideas is where it probably the usefulness comes, right? When you go and ask the customer, is this useful to you? Present something very like cheap work-wise, like you don't have to do a lot of work. You can do some wireframes or stuff like that and present two of those low work requirement kind of ideas and get feedback and then start on one or the other. But yeah, it's like it's also everything is a balance. It's like starting on implementing an idea and even delivering some code may turn out to be not the best. Like you may have chosen not the best idea, right? Not the best route. So probably starting even smaller from that, in validating that idea in some way or another. With what I think what we do now is like kind of research, like UX research. I think we have or something along those lines, where they were like, we want to implement this like. We're doing work items right now. So if we would do work items, here's what the idea behind work items is. Can we validate that that's a good thing, that we want to do that, and things like that before even starting to do that. So yeah, it's it is interesting because it's always hard. It's also hard to kind of go always to the customers to ask them, because like not always you get the engagement. But yeah, if there is an opportunity to do so, I think that's the best option.
I need to jump off in like 5 seconds. So real quick, there was some update on the schedule to align with Dallas, because we had a lot of scheduling problems lately. I'm very sorry. So please read the Slack message, and there's link to calendar event. So so we can meet in 3 weeks, so everyone can join if that's okay with you. So but everything is on the channel, so on the Slack channel. So please take a look. And I need to go now. Sorry. Have a great rest of the day.